and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
Hello there, beloved Ascension pioneers, and welcome to this update on our Ascension and self-mastery for me here in my beautiful sacred space here in this beach. This is just an amazing energy here, my sacred elven home, and sometimes, you know, you have to go and take a trip somewhere else or visit something different on this planet to really see how much the space of belonging is the magic that you co-create within your sacred space. So beauty and magic, it's everywhere. But you know, what's most sacred to us is the home that we really built through our own essence, through our vibration. So this is something I really wish to say, because a lot of us still on this path of mastery, sometimes we feel that it's supposed to be something outside of us, that we need to pursue something special, you know, because our self-mastery path should mean that, you know, we can create simply anything, which is true, we can. But really at the same time, simultaneously, which is what I'm guiding myself into, these souls who are desiring a more simple life, a more nature-based life. And this does deal with the art of surrendering, and this will be the topic for today, which is surrendering to that which is our most beneficial and most core essence of who we are, without trying to so much pursue things from the outside or compare with the realities of other choices of other beings. Because what's happening right now is just such a multiple variety of different choices here on this planet. So the topic of ascension, self-mastery, and the art of surrendering really brings us to the core of knowing that, you know, we're constantly living through surrendering. This is something which is so beneficial to who we are, because, you know, we surrender a certain package of either attachment, addiction, you know, perception that are filtered through our egoic responses. That's something we're being used to, or habitual patternings, and sometimes even from the environment, you know, what's expected from you, and the kind of lives that it's almost injected within us even at our birth. You know, this is how you're supposed to live. And as we become the sacred rebels and we start to choose our own paths, you know, even our closest allies sometimes will not fully resonate with us, because our own frequency is still our own. You know, so in truth, I always say this, that ascension is the bringing of the multidimensional aspects of who you are in one essence. So when a soul is ready to ascend, it simply means that it's ready to integrate all these aspects as one being, becoming one being, in such richness and depth of simply being that, you know, although you still have human experiences and you still do things and you still are experiencing matter, because this is a path of spirit merging with matter, but at the same time, you feel like an ancient soul who's been there, done that, you know, trial and error. And still, in the end, what's most important is this, the art of surrendering into your truth, into your own personal frequency, because a lot of times we still wish to see what others are doing, what others are pursuing. And sometimes we feel, is what I'm choosing maybe weird, or, you know, is it spaced out? How do I even belong to this world? And the true nature of us as Ascension pioneers is not needing to belong to the world at large, but to creating our own world, creating our own reality. And we do so with this art of surrendering into our own essence. So what does this mean? You know, a lot of people think that becoming a master of the self and gaining more mastery is gaining more control, gaining more power. In truth, is more about knowing how to surrender and living in the wisdom of that divine will. Divine will does not mean that your will as a human is now cut off and it's separate, and you stop being human in the ways that you see others are living out their human nature. It just means that your human nature has changed. It's more refined, it's different, it's more subtle. You live everything from your frequency rather than goals, pursuits, manifestations. So at your core level is the abundance that you are. And even when we wish to create things like money, you know, physical things, which is true, that for everyone, you know, physical things still have a certain amount of value. We're just not attached to how we attain it, when it will come to us, how it will come to us, and then what are the benefits we will have from it. It's just the surrendering into the subtle nature of our soul, so that the profound guidance of our soul is the only thing in the end that just guides us, even though we still might have a bit of that separate voice which tells you, maybe you should try this instead, or maybe do that. And when you do it, oftentimes you will see, maybe it's not what we really wanted to pursue, and yet it was perfect for me to realize that what I have is already who I am. And that sacred belonging space I often see when I connect with others who maybe are choosing different paths and have so many goals and pursuits and hobbies and interests and things they want to see in this life, which is perfect because, you know, when we feel that we need to sacrifice something in order to ascend, to lift up in our frequency, to live a different lifestyle, it's still not natural, because once it's a natural change and shift within you, it's not even going to feel like a sacrifice. It will feel like the other things are sacrifices, because I often feel that when I come home in this simple way of being and living this elven lifestyle that I created for myself, it feels so natural to me. I don't have to really go outside of myself. And a lot of time my human voice also has sayings, and it says, I want this experience. And if it feels I need it, I pursue it, but without being attached to it. I simply say, okay, I will allow that part of me to play itself out, so I will see what's the general bigger picture of that integration that wants to come into my life. Because like I said, Ascension is integrating all these aspects of our multidimensional nature, becoming so whole in them that we don't feel anymore we need to pursue every single thing and be with every single one. And, you know, it's like being the center stage of life itself. You become life incarnate, and the more you do, the less you need to pursue life in a certain way. So the art of letting go, the art of surrendering, and there's many aspects that we're surrendering into, is basically that loss of control and the things we thought they're going to be a certain way. And I speak to many people, and I know that although we sometimes feel mastery is something, it will still mean different things to different degrees to different people. Because when we say we're masters, you know, each one of us, when you master the self, as you come out at a more greater group level of consciousness, you will still be in different aspects of that mastery. So again, you know, you might have two beings perceiving mastery in a different way, and it's beautiful. I'm not saying there's anything wrong to it. There needs to be no separation there. It's just the acceptance that in the end, it's really all about what is mastery for us. And how you master yourself and your reality might be different. And for example, I have one person, it's very strong in their essence, and when we talk about mastery, but certain things that they're saying about it do not fully resonate with me. And I just listen, I absorb, but I don't let it enter my reality and how, for example, it influences my life, because I know that certain perceptions are just theirs. They're not mine. They're not of my soul. So in the end, that art of letting go is even letting go of belonging to a group, because again, it's natural. Grouping with the group consciousness and agreeing and being on the same level of resonance, again, is a natural occurrence. The more we allow ourselves to be in the surrender space of who we are and communing with our soul, the less that comparison and wanting to belong falls away. And although it's an experience, it's beautiful to have relationships, because they will show us these magnified aspects of the self that we don't always see so clearly when we're so focused on what we're doing just through our own expression, but also how do we express and co-create and correlate with others. So this is an important aspect and the segment of our ascension. But again, like I say, when it comes to our own detriment, when we feel like we have to compromise in a way, or even give our beliefs so that we can exchange, that we can more even out with others, again, it doesn't free us up completely. So ascension is the complete freedom of your soul to live the reality according to your soul, no longer trying to fit yourself in the box of the collective, of even in the New Age, how ascension is supposed to be, or even how self-mastery is supposed to be. That everything of that, all those convictions in the end, they have to be dissolved for us to have a greater reality of your soul, how it shows us the things that we need for our own mastery. So that is why when I share these videos, I try to be as general as I can, because I'm not here to influence anyone with the perceptions that are just filtered through my own personality and how it lives itself out, and how my life is being played out. And a lot of people would say, oh, why don't you share more of this and more of that and more personal? And my job here is never to be so personal. This, for me, it's how I experience my own sacredness, my own paradise that I create for myself. It's just show the way how I do it, so that everyone knows they need to do it their own way themselves. Because my every single message is about the same thing. At its core, it's the same thing. It's surrender into your soul. So all the different aspects of surrendering our fear, surrendering fear of intimacy, surrendering the fear of change, surrendering the fear of expectations, surrendering the fear to be right, to be this and that, all these are basically at the core, they're the same, to be the freedom of our soul. So the soul has its voice, but because the soul is no longer separate from our human expressions, it's becoming, and it's almost like engulfing all of those and synthesizing all of those. Every single one of those voices needs to have an expression in our stage of life. But again, as I say, it's going to be different and unique to each and every one of us. And a lot of times when I speak to people who are more aware, they will eventually, because they're so excited that they get this knowledge and this these epiphanies and this awakening stirring deep within them, they'll get so excited that I've witnessed this in the spiritual circles. Everyone somehow wants to kind of still put it in a box. You know, this is how it is. This is the guidance. Are we receiving the same guidance? Are we receiving this? It's still, when it's the creation level, when it's the core creation level, it's still about you. It's still about the uniqueness of your own creation core. So that's the teachings of the White Brotherhood, is that there's so much variety in how we serve the unity of white light, and yet there's uniqueness to it. Each of those aspects will be in a way different. So sometimes, you know, I talk to people and they say, maybe this, how we perceive now money and how we're supposed to be in the world as new masters is supposed to be like this and this like that, and that's still categorizing. Each one of us, they're going to not achieve, but are going to live out our own personal mastery. We'll still function in a different way. We'll still have different degrees of our awareness, different degrees of how we serve the collective, different tasks, different orientations, different living lifestyles. You know, for example, I love this simple life in the mountains. Someone might feel that their mastery is just being in the city and mastering the city. And I'm not saying there's anything at all wrong with that. And that's the beauty of really, really going to the root of your own creation self. So the art of surrendering, what I would also want to say here is to surrender the need to create anything or, you know, manifest anything from a state of separation. Like, for example, sometimes we say, oh, I lack money, I need to create more money, and then we try to find these tools and techniques, and, you know, sometimes people even say we deserve more of this, and we deserve, and when we try to say, I need to be compensated for this, I need this or that, and that's still in its truest aspect, it's just our ego saying, you know what, I deserve this. You know? Because the soul already knows itself as pure deservance. It does not need to say that. But when we have those expressions coming out of ourselves, we need to listen to them. We need to honor them, because there might be a wisdom in it that we kind of need to live out. But when we live it out, we will also transcend it. That's the thing. We cannot transcend things that we have not allowed to come to the surface. So once they do and we live them out, our human self gets the right of the experience, but our master selves already knows all of this. So it's our timeless nature. So the only reason actually why we need to control, why we perceive that mastery as control, is because we perceive ourselves as limited, not timeless. When you see yourself as a timeless, unlimited, infinite being, you won't feel that certain things need to happen in a certain time frame that your ego thinks is right, because your soul already knows. It knows what it has, it knows what it is, because it has through what it is. It is the abundance of it all. And by knowing that, we no longer have these outdated modes of these expectations and certain outcomes and rigid beliefs, even about mastery, even about ascension. That's all I'm saying here, as that we even have to let that go, how ascension is supposed to be for us, and we can only generalize the mechanics of it, you know, how. For me, I like to share this within my scope of purpose about the art of physical ascension through soul alchemy and the things we're doing to get closer to that aspect. And although we're still having to live out our human experience, but we're still going through it in different layers. But again, what I'm saying is there's no specific way for us how, and there's no specific guidance that would apply to all. So, the more we live out in that freedom, the more our soul will be the guiding chariot for that freedom. It will show us things, it will reveal everything. And although sometimes we might have doubts, confusions, we want to put things in a box. Like even when we say we're new now, we're masters of the new and all these words, well, we all use them. But what do they really mean? The new self, the new now, the new master, the master of the new is all about constantly being so open that the guidance is new for you. The guidance comes for you, but it might change, it might interchange, it might travel in one direction, come back with the next, and you know, things come and go, different layers to it. So the more maturity of the soul that we integrate in our human form, the more we will just flow with that. So when we have any kind of desire to create through dependency or addiction or feeling of lack, like I need to create more money because I don't have it now, but we still are not creating through joy, which is the only higher dimensional essence, is we create everything through joy, which is our natural soul frequency, is the higher vibration, more refined human, the new humans we're becoming. But a lot of times we still say, what's the way? What's the mode I'm going to get to it? What's the technique? What's the method? I'm not saying that physical steps are not required for us, because we're doing that mastery in the physical, but not through, for example, trying to modify something by feeling negative emotions about it. For example, it's good to feel it, so we know that what is affecting this choice, but it's not good to create from that space then, you know, and that's the only reason why these feelings are coming up, so we can see, are we really wanting to create from that space? Because in this new template, in this new ascended template, we cannot create anything that comes from these lower frequencies, because it's just going to be a quick manifestation, but it will not be a permanent one. It will dissolve very quickly. So to be a master of creation means to understand those sacred laws and principles by living it out through yourself, but you actually having the exact experience of that. And I know a lot of people say, are you studying this? I'm teaching this. This spiritual teaching, that on that, these beings teaching me, archangels, Elohim, realms of different light councils. I get that, I really do. But in the end, you know, how do we apply these teachings on our own personal level of vibration? How are we in that frequency that we can even integrate that? So it's our frequency that is our first and foremost aspect in our human form that shows us how much we've surrendered these old, that we can actually embody it. So the art of surrendering in our mastery is a really profound thing, something we all need to kind of eventually deal with, to know that the more masterful we are, the more we'll surrender. We'll surrender to these higher laws, to higher natural ways of being, and just live it out without any kind of like molding it in a certain way we think is right. Just allowing the self-mastery to become evident to ourselves, self-obvious to us when it's time for us in our own unique way, in a beautiful sacred space that we create. And that's why it is so important to create a sacred space where you feel safe and nurtured and supported, because your soul will most intensely speak to you through this sacred space. It will be most loud in those ways. It will have its strong voice that way. Also, when we kind of are, you know, creating things from a space of frustration, of bitterness, of resentment, of that anger, even if just slightly, a little bit, it's still not higher dimensional way of creating as our own higher dimensional mastery implies. So it's good for us to see, because sometimes things will be shown to us that we really need to dissolve and let go. And I've heard someone said, I think it was Larkma, that when it's going to be that final push, when people are going to be asked to choose between really physically ascending that way or still kind of clinging on to the old, they will really be asked. And they'll really be asked to step up and choose, you know, because we're making tiny choices every day, but eventually a big one will come and when we're going to be ready. And that's when our master will say, ready or not, here I come, are you ready? And a lot of people are thinking, oh, what about my life? What about this? What about my pets? What about these people? And as long as we're still thinking that this is a sacrifice, we're not still willing to live fully from ourselves. We have all companions, we all have relationships, we have pets, we have hobbies, interests, all of that. But the art, but the gift of spiritual mastery and physical ascension is choosing you, choosing your soul above it all. Because once you do, you're coming from the ascended perspective. And that's what it means to let go of all else. So anyway, this was my message for today. Probably so much more to say on this topic, but it's a big deal in our self-mastery. It's a big deal to really, even for others, because I notice that when there's people who are really highly aware, I'm not saying that awareness is not high, but the implementation of that, the application of that knowledge in the physical, to be completely humble in what you're receiving through yourself for you, not in kind of applying it to another and generalizing to the degree that it would be an interference. You know, and that is why when I talk to people, I never really talk to them that way, that this is it, and this is what if this is right for them. And I just live and let live. I share what Spirit kind of nudges me to share, but then every one of us needs to integrate on our own level, where we are, how it applies to us, specifically where we're at currently, presently, and where we wish to move into next. So, as always, so much love, wisdom, and power, and stay tuned to the beautiful Elven song coming up at the end. As always, thank you for supporting, for subscribing to my channel. It's always a funny thing to say to me, but I say it anyway. Thank you for those of you supporting through donations. Very welcome. And as always, thank you for sharing your feedback with me. I really deeply appreciate it because it helps me to see how you perceive what I'm sharing and how it affects you and how it's actually beneficial in your journey. So that is always a major big plus. Stay connected. I love you all so much. As always, so much love, wisdom, and power. Bye. this year's Easter occurred right after the eclipse season. The most powerful changes can be felt during that time, which may cause individuals to feel more separate from everything of the old. Each gateway amplifies the energy of new earth and separation of the old grid system. The more that the old grid system dissolves through us, the more the essence of self-mastery can be felt and utilized. We may acquire much mastery in human understanding and relating, and yet the most powerful changes occur when we actually transcend the current norms and what we have been experiencing so far. The kind of change that is not necessary, which means for our own survival, and yet it is chosen by many on the physical ascension timeline, is the kind of change that marks our entry and arrival into the higher, more refined levels of living and our reality of self-mastery. Masters of the new will be constantly asked and challenged to create from a new level of perspective, whatever that will be. The key here is complete self-liberation and personal freedom to fully live our soul. The integrated soul self is constant freedom and expansion of being, which marks a new threshold for an ascending individual. For example, one might still live in the world of duality and yet experience only love and unity. The paradox of the unified soul is that it can feel whole wherever it is, no matter what it is experiencing. So the integrated experience is different than the separated, fragmented human experience. One is human and yet fully awake and ascended. This is how the art of ascension, descension blend and merge together in divine fusion. The main essence of the new is the constant expansion and experience and the expression of divine creativity which flows through soul passion. Divine creativity is not the same as channeling something through us. We actually become the integrated expression of what we are translating through that channeling, and the more this becomes felt, the less one wishes to engage in old forms of being in fragmentation, where the source of divine creativity is often lacking, and it feels like something outside of us, therefore the constant drive to seek for it. One seeks for that special something or someone in order to fulfill that core desire of wholeness. That is the soul longing that calls for the coming back home. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with seeking, because it is the tool of the soul that eventually leads to the enlightenment which already is. There are many layers and aspects to what one is, and only where there's complete freedom of their expression without any filtering, there can be the pathway into physical ascension. The physical soul alchemy is then only the truest physical mirror reflection of that perfect soul alignment in form. It is often most challenging and doubtful when one enters into the realm of pure freedom and trust of the soul, because the physical body vehicle does not always have the reference point for that, to know fully and wholeheartedly whether that is truly being lived and experienced. Because of that, many are resisting such changes, and they won't implement them because there's nothing that tells them that they need to, because their physical survival does not need it to continue to exist on maintaining and self-preserving on that current level of awareness and experience. The changes that come from the ascended self are those kind of changes that require soul alchemy and refinement, and are therefore more advanced, for they are beyond the survival mechanisms of the old world of lower density. So in the end, it all comes down to frequency, to the art of refined soul embodiment. One needs to deeply tune into the self and see whether they're making their choices for that frequency attainment out of the old ways of being and perception, or whether they're truly coming from a higher, more refined levels of consciousness. When we say that everything is already pure consciousness, that is absolutely correct, and yet there are still different degrees and levels of the form that consciousness takes. So for that matter, self-mastery becomes all about those higher refined choices and choosing to stay in alignment with them. A true master of higher density knows how to transcend the lower density reality through soul alchemy. This is not done because there is a need program behind it. This is a natural attunement when the soul is ready, and there is no sacrifice involved in that anymore, for nothing that already is needs to be sacrificed. What used to be and was perceived is simply replaced with something new through the law of divine compensation. When one understands this, they are not afraid of change, of the void, and they know how to constantly surrender to something new, for there is always consciousness and there is always life. So therefore, there will always be the appropriate manifestation of life that is available at each level of soul attainment. All will be, for all already is. And this is a state that more and more individuals are now beginning to experience. So be it, and so it is.